Hi, everyone. Welcome to another SpotLink Tech Talk. This one, like in previous August, we're bringing you our IT budgeting Tech Talk to kind of go over how you should look at integrating IT budgeting into your 2021 plans. So again, welcome, and let's go ahead and get started. So at first, I'm going to talk about some alternative budgeting approaches that we've seen by businesses throughout the years. They have a place in certain businesses, so let's kind of go over those. So first one is the spend only if it's broke approach. There's no formal IT budgeting here. The approach is just spend as little as possible. The benefit is that it may reduce cost, but of course there are various drawbacks that can happen from that. The biggest one is it increases lower productivity and work outages. So if something breaks or is slow or not working well, people can work slower. We've seen instances where that probably has cost them about 30% of their productivity just from having a bad IT infrastructure. And of course, there's work outages too. If something breaks and it's not easy to fix, you can have a time down, which costs empty labor cost, and cost you sales, and of course, reputation if you're not able to deliver on what you're supposed to be delivering. The next one we have is the no maintenance approach. So in this one, you don't spend anything on maintenance for hardware or software. Benefit, it may reduce the scheduled costs, but there's some gambles here. Again, if you have an outage and it takes a while to repair it, you can have lost wages, productivity, sales, and do harm to your reputation. One thing to consider in that is that a lot of times when you have a support agreement, you'll be able to get fairly quick response, next business day, in some cases even 4-hour response. But when you don't have a contract, it can take days or even weeks to get a replacement, especially if it's more of a specialty item or is old and out of production. And of course, you have high repair costs and replacement costs, because with a warranty, the idea is they replace it for free if it has a problem. If you don't have those, then you're going to have to pay the entire cost for a repair or a replacement piece of equipment. All right, so one of the ideas here is you should try to know your costs before you try this. You know, your internal costs, labor, facilities, external costs, lost sales, and the indirect costs such as reputation. We actually did a deep dive on this on one of our previous Tech Talks back in 2018 called Calculating the Cost of a Disaster, talking about an IT disaster. Feel free to look at that. That goes into a detail on how you can calculate those. All right, so our minimum entry approach. That is where you buy the minimum hardware, software, and it's not necessarily intended for the use. You try to get something a little cheaper that may not have the full features that you need for a particular task. Again, the benefit here is it may reduce upfront costs. And the drawbacks, again, if you're trying to use something that's not really up to it, it can, of course, cause lower performance. Things run slower, and that's going to result in higher labor costs. And, of course, you may have potential unexpected work outages, too, again, because a machine breaks because it's being overtaxed, or it may not have the fault tolerance that a better item would have, where even if something does fail, other components will take over and it doesn't have an operational impact. And of course, all of this results in you also have higher IT labor costs, because it's going to take your IT longer to try and finagle this stuff to keep on working and do what you need. So our spend tomorrow, not today approach. This is where you purchase short-term subscription services, even if perpetual or long-term, it's much cheaper. Recurring theme here, it may reduce upfront costs, but the drawbacks are that you probably will spend much more money over time. A prime example of this is like AWS services. Just paying the hourly cost for a server is relatively expensive to buying what they call a reserved instance, where you're promising to pay that over a year or 2 years or 3 years, and in some cases is paying up front. That can reduce it by 30–50%. But of course, you've got to be really sure this is what you're going to need for that time, because you are locked into it. The caveat to this approach is that in cash poor, high growth companies, actually may make sense, because the return on investment in a high growth company is that you can afford to spend more tomorrow to reduce your costs today. All right, so next one is the I don't need that approach. So you decide not to use backup, security, software, firewalls, patching, etc. Again, may reduce IT costs, but the drawbacks are potentially large negative business impacts if that gamble fails. If you don't use backups and you have a hard drive or a RAID fail, that data is just gone, no getting it back. Likewise with security software, if you get an infection or ransomware, you may have your business completely brought to a halt or even shut down. So think wisely before you try that. A caveat to all these alternative approaches is that all things have a real cost benefit. This is a phrase I like to use from Disneyland here in Southern California, that real rewards await those who choose wisely. And that's ever so true with your IT investments too. A lot of them take some planning and forethought rather than just trying to get through by day to day. Okay, so let's look now at our recommended IT budgeting process. So let me give you this disclaimer. At SpotLink, we are concerned primarily with risk mitigation in regard to data protection and data security. So in that regard, we typically are predisposed to spend a little more to improve the reliability and the predictability while reducing risk. So what I'm going to mention here kind of comes along with that perspective. So let's do a quick overview of the 6 areas of IT budgeting. Sustaining labor, that is ongoing labor for your current operations. Subscription, support, maintenance renewals. Hardware, software refresh where needed. And these are probably the 2 bigger ones, operational improvements and strategic initiatives. And those last 2 will often have project labor associated with them. So let's look at sustaining labor budgeting. So these are just some general guidelines we found over the years on what your labor should cost. In a stable environment, generally the support needs are about 1 hour per employee per month. So if you have a company of 30 employees that's just kind of status quo, you should expect about 30 hours a month of IT assistance needed. However, in a rapidly growing company where things are a lot changing, we've seen it as high as about 10 hours per employee per month. So there's quite a wide variation. But again, an overarching generality, we normally see about 3% of what your payroll is going on IT labor. Okay, so looking at sustaining labor budgeting and what types there are. So of course you have in-house employees, those that you already have on the payroll. So besides their wages, you also have to factor in payroll taxes, benefits, vacation time, sick days, equipment, training facilities, etc. All those add up to it. For outside companies outsourcing your IT, such as we do here at SpotLink, we generally charge you a monthly fee, maybe based on users or equipment, or just a flat fee based upon some negotiated contract. So that's just going to be a straight monthly cost, and it's fairly straightforward. And we see hybrid approaches to outsourced versus insourced labor. So like one is where we see inside, you have internal experts, but you outsource the help desk to another company. Likewise, we see the reverse of that, where you have an inside help desk and outside advanced projects. So, you know, you have help desk just inside, and then you go outside whenever you have something needs to get escalated or there's a large project implemented. All right, so here are some special considerations for this year and next. So of course, we've seen a move of labor to home users. So you're going to have IT resources to support that. At this point, you're probably largely done with it. But as you add new home users, that's going to generally take more labor than your historical adding in-office users. Likewise, labor to support the collaboration software that you're using, whether it be Teams or Zoom. And then as this crisis diminishes, how to move people, what the labor is going to be to move people back into the office. All right, so for budgeting for subscriptions, so these you probably already know, they're like Microsoft 365, your telecom, whether that be phones, hosted VoIP, and your monthly internet fee. So most of those are a monthly fee, like I said. Your marketing platform, historically called a website, but now you generally have packages where lead aggregation and lead sourcing, all of that's in a combined platform. And we find that mostly outsourced now. And then, of course, your cloud services like AWS, Azure, SAP, QuickBooks, any of those. There's a large, obviously a large group of services that would fall into this category. Those are generally going to be monthly, but maybe, depending upon your contract, could have some other payment schedule. So some special considerations for now, as we said, collaboration software, Zoom and Teams. You probably have been expanding that. So a special note here to people is that most Teams exploratory licenses will need to be turned into paid licenses in 2021. So you should factor that into your budget. All right, so renewals, budgeting, support maintenance. So you want to look at items like your servers, firewalls, routers, switches. Those are going to have a maintenance contract on them. A lot of times it will cover both firmware or software updates as well as the physical hardware itself. So if something fails, you can get a replacement on it fairly quickly. Those usually fall into either a 24/7 by 4 hour or a next business day category. So the 24/7, obviously 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and then 4-hour response if you need a piece of hardware. Software maintenance. Though you're going to want to continue to do and support and upgrade maintenance on perpetual licenses, such as Microsoft Software Assurance. That's actually a biannual agreement. If you have any accounting systems, ERP systems, CRM that's on-premise and perpetual, you're probably going to have to pay an annual fee to keep support on that. All right, so our approach to renewals budgeting is you review last year's subscriptions, maintenance. You try to come up with anything from you try to come up with anything new from the previous year, or look at those that might have annual, biannual, or triannual agreements that you didn't have to pay last year. And are there any contracts that are up? And what are the implications of that? Can you downsize? Are you going to need to renew? Do you want to look for something else? In any case, good accounting practices will help with this immensely. This can be anywhere from a real struggle to just a simple couple of reports. All right, so for refresh budgeting, you want to look for those pieces of equipment that are going end of life, such as servers, firewalls, switches, routers, like I said before. If they are, you're going to have to probably buy replacement hardware. And likewise, software. If you're using some sort of specialty software, especially if it's on-premise and they're end-of-lifing that product, you might have to replace it. Not very common to have that with software, but it does happen from time to time. And of course, you're also going to have to budget for anticipated failed or failing hardware. If you have support agreements on all those, this isn't really going to be a factor. But if you have some that's not under support, or some that are beyond end of life, you'll have to factor in what percentage you think is going to fail and how much it's going to cost you. And then likewise, when looking at things retiring, what will replace it? Have your business place needs changed? Like, do you want to move a server that's going to end of life to the cloud? We do that all the time. Are there new capabilities and features that are beneficial that you want to take advantage of and replace with the current system? And in a lot of cases, this is going to require a requirements and design analysis. Depending upon the scope, this can be just a small, simple kind of thought process, or it can be a full documented analysis. So operational improvements budgeting. These are where you just want to continue on with your steady state and include either incremental improvements of current operations. So these might be like, besides your ongoing IT from last year, maybe you have some growing staff. You're going to say it's going to increase 10%. Most likely your IT is going to increase around 10%. If you're going to have any new offices, you've got to be able to put the infrastructure in those. And now you're looking at home offices as well. Do you need any increased performance? Is it running too slow for you? Might need to do upgrades on memory or processors or something to get more performance out of your systems, as well as any new features or functions you may want to add on to your current applications to get more capabilities. And special considerations here, as I said, home offices. Besides the labor to support them, what are you asking your home users to supply? Are they supplying everything? You supply a computer, a printer, firewall. Those are all considerations. And even if you've only done, like, they have a computer now, these are things they may want to do, or you may want to do later, especially if you're in a high security environment. This is one thing to consider that we've seen happen in other cases where personal devices have been used in work. If employees see that if they're being requested to work from home and they actually see you shutting down office space, they may request a reimbursement for internet, partial use of home, computer or phone, or even for their floor space. We do know of people who have had to kind of look for bigger homes, or actually used a room that was used for something else and turned it into an office. So it does impact their floor space at home. And then another consideration is, if you're moving a lot of people at home, you may be closing offices. So how is that going to impact your ongoing IT support? And then the last one is for mostly for next year, or hopefully later this year. If people start returning to the office, you're going to have expenses there as well. Okay, strategic initiative budgeting. So these are ones where there's a brand new large-scale item going on. It may be a new business unit, which will require their own internal hardware, software, and systems to get them up and running. Likewise, you may be looking at a fairly large-scale mitigation or integration, such as deciding to move some or all of your servers to the cloud, changing out accounting systems, or changing out CRM or ERP systems. Those are very large projects that take months to happen, and they need to be budgeted accordingly. Okay, so project labor budgeting. So this is the labor for the incremental improvements and strategic initiatives. So you want to look at, do you have internal capacity? Is the IT staff you have on you currently have already ready to take these projects on? Or do you want to bring in a vendor professional? Like, if you're going to do an accounting system, bring on those consultants for that accounting system. Or do you want to bring in outsourced project management project staff, such as an IT company like ourselves to help with that. So the strategic IT budgeting process concept. So this is one I really try to get everyone to follow. It really helps transform your IT spending from a cost center drag to a strategic competitive advantage. So just follow these steps, and it can really make a big difference to your profitability. So first step one in this strategic IT process is getting accounting projections of continuing expenses. So get projections of labor expenses over the next year, assuming current operations. So look at last year and kind of project those into next year with percentages up or down based on staffs or other internal measures you may have. And then do a projection of next year's subscriptions, support, maintenance renewals. Accounting will likely need to work with the CIO to adjust for any expected changes. Be sure to capture any of those biannual or triannual expenses that may not have had last year, but will be coming up in the next year. Step two, then you want to have the VCIO recommend a refresh spending. How much hardware, software, etc. is going to need to be replaced. So you want to look at a business-minded CIO that recommends the equipment and hardware to replace the expiring systems. The recommendation should look at changes in the offering that the vendors have out there. Is there a different model that's available or a different version of the software? And look at the cost benefit of those. And then integrate with that the labor to implement those refreshes, whether it be from internal IT sources or from outsourced experience. Okay, and the analysis and ramification. One thing you want to do is look at what would happen if you didn't implement these changes. So do an analysis and the ramifications of that and supply that to management so they can know the consequences of not making each of these decisions. If you decide to not move to the cloud and keep on-premise servers that are beyond end of life, make sure they understand the detriment that can happen if you have a server out for a week because you have a hard time getting replacement parts for it. All right, step three, COO and CIO get together and recommend operational improvements. They work together interactively to look at the operational expenses and identify areas that technology can be used to automate or streamline. That can be a wide range of things from just using software more effectively to buying new add-ons or such that I talked about. And then based on that discussion, the CIO recommends those operational improvements. And as you're going to hear this repeatedly, this should include an ROI type analysis, including labor, to understand what the business impact of that will be. So then the CEO and executive management identify the strategic initiatives, and executive management feeds that to the CIO for analysis. CIO looks at the technology solutions that will help maximize the business benefits of these initiatives, and the CIO recommends to management a technology plan for these initiatives, including an ROI analysis. And then executive management, using whatever their business processes are, approves or disapproves each of those recommendations. With that, the CIO develops a one-year plan. Given exec management's approval, we'll put that plan together, identify labor sources, whether they be internal or external, and supply that plan back to executive management. The end result is that following these steps, your technology will be completely aligned with your business goals. All players will know exactly what's happening and when. All significant expenses will be anticipated. Operational efficiencies should be maximized, and business impact and results can be measured. All right, thank you very much. Go to a Q&A session now. Anyone have any questions? Okay. Okay. All right. Well, thanks, everyone. Really appreciate you taking the time to listen to this. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. My name is Robert Hood. Email address rhood@spotlink.com. Look forward to any of those that you want to send me. You have a great day. Bye.